Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. We are going to begin momentarily. Just a gentle reminder, if anybody has a cell phone, if we could please take a moment to turn it on silent, not to disturb the sacred funeral ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could ask everybody to please find their seats. Thank you. Thank you, friends. Just another gentle reminder to please turn your cell phones on silent. Officiating our service today is Rabbi Leonard Matinky.
The 23rd Psalm, Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, bino deshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yenahaleni, nafshi yeshovev yancheni b'magle tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech b'geit salmavet lo irara ki ata imadi, shiftecha mishantecha hema yenachamuni, ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorarai, dishanta v'shemen roshi, Kosi rivaya, achtov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti beveta Adonai liorach yamim. In the service folders on the inside, if you'd please join with me in English. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Today, we have gathered to remember a remarkable woman, a devoted daughter, cherished wife, beloved mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother, a treasured sister and sister-in-law, aunt and cousin, a leader and a person who through her joy of life and force of personality brought people together and kept them together. Today we remember Arlene Freedman of blessed memory, Esther Bat Yosef Shoshana Aleha Shalom. In a few moments, we'll be hearing from her children and grandchildren. But before I call upon them, I want to share with you a story and a few thoughts. Nearly 30 years ago, Arlene, together with about 100 other women from Hadassah, an organization she led and devoted so much of her life and resources to support, felt that the time had come to have a bat mitzvah. All of these women were born at a time when bat mitzvahs were at best rare, and to have one, even at an advanced age, was, as Arlene said, the fulfillment of a dream. It was, as I'm told, a beautiful event, part of the National Convention of Hadassah, with more than 2,000 people in attendance. And to prepare for that day, Arlene had to study not only the Torah portion, but also learn about the history of Jerusalem. Why Jerusalem? Possibly because that's where Hadassah and its hospitals are headquartered. But I also believe because Jerusalem is so central to our identity, the focus of our prayers, the place where our history meets our dreams. And those dreams center on the Temple Mount, the place where two holy temples were built and later destroyed, both I would note, at precisely this time of year on the Jewish calendar. And in the temple stood the building, the Holy of Holies, the inner sanctum, where the Ark of the Covenant was placed, and inside of which were the tablets of the Ten Commandments. 2 sets of tablets were inside that ark, the ones fashioned by God but broken by Moses, and the ones fashioned by Moses and sanctified by God. Why keep both sets? Why the broken and the whole? Because, as the rabbis of the Talmud taught, both were sacred. Both were worthy of our attention and respect, reminding us that we need to learn not only from things in life that are whole, joyful, and productive, but also from the things in life which are broken and imperfect. For most of Arlene's 95 years, her life was whole, joyful, and productive. Together with Kenny, she created a family and a legacy that few can imagine. And from those years, we can learn so much. We can learn from the way she cared for her mother as her mother grew older, and from the close relationships she had and she cherished with her sister Carole and her sister-in-law Pauline. We can learn from the way she and Kenny shared the same values, but brought their own personalities to the fore to support those values. And of course, from the extraordinary nachas she had from her children and especially her grandchildren. And let's not forget to learn from the way that Arlene built communities and organizations. In fact, for many years, Arlene was our family's yichus, our entire family's point of pride, as she served as president of Hadassah and as the prominent leader in the community. But we can also learn from her more recent years, when unfortunately her life was imperfect and broken, when slowly her memory began to fade. And Kenny cared for her day in and day out. He shared that with me just days before he had passed away. And her children cared for her as well. We can learn from the moments when her personality would come through and how the professionals who cared for her truly cared for her. Both parts of her life were sacred, both instructive and both inspiring, whether because of what she did or because of the example she had created that allowed others to do for her. And that legacy is something that we have to hold on to so very tight. One final thought. As I mentioned earlier, this is a profoundly sorrowful season for the Jewish people that leads up to this Sunday, which is the fast of Tisha B'Av, when we remember that destruction of Jerusalem, the loss of our temple, and the beginning of the long exile and dispersion of our people. As a result, on a national level, we are, on this day, the entire Jewish people immersed in mourning. And yet, Michael and Kathy and Lauren, Ruth Ann and Dan, Ryan and Jessica, Jordan, Connor and Hannah, Rachel, Hannah, Ren and Carole, it's hard to find words, even though we are in mourning, to comfort you after the magnitude of loss you've endured, the passing of your father and grandfather, the passing of his sister, and now the passing of your beloved mother, grandmother, and sister, all within the span of just over a month. In our tradition, such a loss has a name, and it's referred to as tokfo avelav, when grief literally overtakes the mourner, when sorrow is so overwhelming that words simply fall short. And yet I've learned that when words fail, presence matters. Love matters. Stories matter. And that's the comfort I offer to you on this very difficult day. The comfort of knowing that you're here together, that you've shared and will continue to share the stories of a life that was so fully lived, and the love you gave, received, and cherished that will strengthen you, please God, and carry you forward. Arlene, on behalf of us all, I ask your forgiveness for anything we may have done but shouldn't have done, did but shouldn't have done. I pray that now, as you're reunited with Kenny, with your parents and in-laws, that you look down on us from above and serve us as our guardian angel, or as we say in Yiddish, as our gute Beter, keeping this family close, keeping this family supporting one another. May the life of Arlene Freedman, Esther Bat Yosef, Shoshana, remain an everlasting source of blessing. May her soul be bound in the bond of eternal life, and may the Freedman family soon know joy again and celebrate with the same warmth, spirit, and exuberance that Arlene so beautifully embodied. And now we call upon her children, Michael, Lauren, and Ruth, and grandchildren, Ryan, Jordan, Connor, Rachel, Hannah, and Ren, to share their thoughts with all of us.
Thank you, Lenny, for the nice comments. Appreciate that. So less than 6 weeks ago, on June 22nd, we were in the same room to say goodbye to our father. Now we find ourselves back here on July 31st to say goodbye to our mom, Arlene Freedman. So while it's difficult to say goodbye to two parents in such a short period of time, I'd like to believe that my mom knew that our dad was gone. And even with her severe dementia, somehow she knew she was ready to join him. My mom and dad lived a wonderful life. Mom enjoyed life and had fun. It shows in the many pictures that we have to remember her by. Mom grew up in Chicago. She met my dad when he came back from his enlistment in the Army. She went to Roosevelt College and worked as a teacher until I was born. After that, she became a homemaker, as many women in her generation did. When we were young, Dad was building his dental practice and worked a couple of jobs. Mom was always there for us and took us where we needed to go. She took us to the Y for swim lessons. She got us ready for summer camp in the city and joined with my sisters in Girl Scouts. In the summers, our regular hangout in the city was at the JCC pool. That was back in the days before we found out the sun wasn't good for your skin. But thanks to Mom, we always had a pretty good tan during those summer years. Mom started out as a volunteer at Rofi Shalom on the south side, where we were founding members. There she met a lot of her lifetime friends. She had many friends on both the north and south sides. I remember it was always referred to as the North Side Couples Club and the South Side Couples Club. That's how I would distinguish between who was in what group. When us kids didn't require a lot of maintenance, for lack of a better word, she became a volunteer at Adasa, and it became her lifelong passion. Lauren, Ruth, and I went on to our own careers, and I think Mom instilled in us, along with Dad, a strong work ethic, whether we were working for a salary or volunteering for a cause. Mom definitely enjoyed cooking. There was always a meal ready for us at the very young age, all the way probably through high school, before we went off to college. I always enjoyed her cooking, maybe two exceptions, salmon patties and Brussels sprouts. Maybe I'm not alone on that, although now I eat them. Mom did a lot of baking, and I have, one of my fond memories is her baking brownies, and I always enjoyed getting the chance to crush the walnuts that went into those brownies. Mom was a smart dresser, and I think that's carried on to both of my sisters, Ruth and Lauren. Probably not so much for me. I'm still a bit of a work in progress on that front. So as I was thinking about it, about what I was going to talk about today, I had a fond memory about my mom and living rooms. So back in the 60s, for those of us of a certain age, it was not uncommon for your parents to cover their living room furniture with plastic or cloth, or sheets in there. So this was the case in our first house in Chicago. I was discouraged from sitting in the living room furniture because of the coverings. Fast forward, we moved to Flossmoor in 1970, and we had a family room, and my mom spent a lot of time furnishing that living room. Very stylish furniture, but for some reason, I could not bring myself to go into the living room very often unless it was a special occasion. This trend seems to have continued into my adult life. To this day, and now we've been in our house for, I think, 34 years, I tend to avoid our living room. And if Kathy, my wife, had listened to me, our living room might still be unfurnished today. I do have one request for those who may be coming to our house after the funeral today. My wife, Kathy, would definitely be happy if some people were to sit in the living room. Not sure that I will actually be in there. Mom loved Dad a lot. While we had strong opinions, she would definitely provide input when it was time for vacation or any religious discussion, or if she disagreed with my father. She loved traveling to Colorado to our vacation home in Vail, and she got to spend a lot of time with all of her grandchildren. Later on in life, they spent a lot of years in Florida. I know she really enjoyed it. I remember visiting them several times and seeing how happy they were with their friends in Delray Beach. I'll always remember Mom had a sweet tooth. It probably extends to a few other members of the family. This was not easy for my dad, I would think, because he was a diabetic for so many years. But there was always ice cream and chocolate cake. I used to bring Mom M&Ms to the Carrington. She could go through a Costco-sized jar of M&Ms like nobody's business if left unattended. For me, I will remember my mom most for the time before she had to go to memory care. She was kind, friendly, and had a wicked sense of humor. Mom, I love you and will miss you a lot, but know you are in a better place. I imagine you are up in heaven, reminding Dad that there is no smoking his cigars inside any celestial building.
It's hard to say. Mom, you were the consummate mother, wife, and volunteer. Dad was the love of your life, and you went along for the ride like a true champ, and you built a wonderful life together. Of course, when it came to summer camping, I think you may have said my idea of camping is the Ritz. I will never forget the smell of our kitchen, always something wonderful on the stove. Or maybe what I really smell is something that came from the Mixmaster. I always wanted a Mixmaster. I couldn't wait to get one. Baking was always your favorite, and everything was perfect. Whether we ate right out of the oven, Michael licking the beaters, I don't remember anything about those walnuts, or it was in the freezer, it was simply the best. Even till this day, when I talk to any old friend, they always mention the freezer. I think people even drove from the north side for some of the goodies, and I certainly remember all the times people came from Champaign, and on the way back to the north side, they stopped and took the stuff out of the freezer. You were a wonderful friend and always made an effort for those near and dear to you. Whether it was Janet or Lynn or Midge, those bonds showed us what it meant to be a real friend. And there was nothing like Sister, where family gatherings were standard and Sunday night rides to the north side were commonplace. We always had to pick up Grandma on Marine Drive along the way and take her home. So it's a long way to Flossmoor. You were a consummate hostess, always looking for a Jewish holiday or special occasion to celebrate. I remember every serving piece you had, and I laughed when I recently moved, wondering why I had so many of my own that I never used. Might have just been a genetic issue. You always stepped up to volunteer for all of our activities. I remember the brownie troop you served as the scout leader, and the cookie sales were always a success thanks to Dad letting us sell them at the office, though you took charge of all the delivery. While I always say that Dad taught me many of the things I knew, I always say you taught me to go shopping, and I made a 40-year career out of that love and passion. I remember every store you took me to in search of the right item. I was skinny and hard to fit. I only wish for that now. Whether it was the hangers up high at Bramson's, the metal elevators at Patsy Rue in the Stevens building, or B at Saks, looking right mattered to you and to your children. When I opened my store, you worked every week there, and not only you were dressed impeccably, but the customers loved you. You always had tickets to the arts, or you visited the Art Institute. You shared your love of ballet, and even in the later years, you joined in our Joffrey season. You were lucky enough to see your granddaughter, Ren, grace that beautiful auditorium stage in the Nutcracker. What a day that was. To this day, I love knowing that something is on the calendar. It gives me great joy to know that one of Ren's favorite things to do in New York is going to the Met. Kindness was who you were. I don't think I ever heard you say a crossword or swear. God knows I did not inherit that from you. Now it's time to reunite with Dad and your friends. They are waiting for you, and I think someone has an extra ticket for a great show and season tickets for the ballet. Ice cream is available in all of your favorite flavors. I thought maybe it'll be like instead of 31 flavors, like 62 flavors. So soak it in. You can bring your singing and your dancing. You and Dad were always some of the best on the dance floor, and my oldest friend Rana reminded me that you could always do the Kazatsky with the best of them. So thanks for sharing all of your love with Ren and I. We love you. I spoke just 6 weeks ago about the larger-than-life character of my father. But truly, our mom always allowed our father to shine while she was the quiet power supporting him. As I reflected this week on the similarities between my dad and my mom, I thought about how much they complemented one another. It made me realize how much I am like him, and therefore I have the same complementary relationship with my mom. For as long as I can remember, prior to the onset of dementia, I spoke to my mom each morning on my way to work or to a Hadassah meeting, and she was always willing to be an ear to my ideas, my needs, my accomplishments, and concerns. I visited my mom often at the Carrington, and the staff there were incredible. As my mom was dying last week, I was struck by how many of them were so sad that she was gone, that she would be gone. She was the life of the floor, as in her last many months, she didn't speak what she thought, but instead sang. And occasionally she would demand things that she wanted. That wasn't my mom, as I recall, but maybe she was channeling Dad a bit. Many of the nurses, CNAs, and activity directors came into her room, told her they loved her, and said goodbyes. I want to thank all the staff, along with Thelma, who was her caregiver prior to her admission to the memory care. You gave my mom wonderful love and care. As a child, I was the baby, as my mom and dad referred to me. My mom parented me differently than Michael, for sure. As a 2-year-old, I stopped napping, and my mom didn't believe in gentle parenting. She told me at 7:30 to go to my room and entertain myself and not to come out. When I graduated high school, she didn't provide me a curfew, and she said she was too old to wait up for me. When my best friend's mother called and woke her one evening after midnight, after she knocked over her desk chair, she said to her mother, "I don't know where they are, I don't care where they are, and don't ever call me again." I think my brother wishes the way she treated him, it wasn't so good for him. It was important for my mom for me to develop independence. Being the youngest, she made sure I learned at an early age. When she shoved me off to Camp Ramah the summer I turned 10 for eight long weeks. But seriously, I loved camp. She wanted me to always be able to take care of myself, to be in a position to provide financially for myself and make my own decisions. My dad didn't always give her those choices. When I married Dan, I kept a medium-sized nest egg from my grandma in my own name to honor my mom's advice, and continued working when the girls were born. Mom loved to be organized, and she loved a clean house. When I was living with my parents in graduate school, I would leave my ironing in the basket just long enough to frustrate her so she would complete the task. The girls said I do the same thing. In high school, I had a New Year's Eve party while my family was in Mexico. We were all responsible BBGers, so everybody slept over. I thought we'd made it until my mom realized a week later we had put the bedding away in the linen closet, just not quite the way she did. Mom taught us how to have a Jewish home and build a Jewish family. When I married Dan and she saw us together, she knew that I would follow in her footsteps. She was so proud of my girls attending Salman Schechter and cherished every Jewish experience there. My mom had the most beautiful Jewish home filled with Shabbat dinners, Jewish celebrations, Judaica, and love. She hosted all the Jewish holidays in our childhood home and Passover until she was 72. Mom was the Jewish matriarch of the Levinthal, her family, and Freedman extended families, and everyone joined in the festivities. Dan and my Passover Seder reflects her as I still make her homemade gefilte fish using her chopping knife, bowls, and pot. My brother Michael has 3 sons, so right before I gave birth to my daughters, her friends told her to bake for a bris, so she would ensure granddaughters. Well, the nurses at Prentice got a wonderful homemade surprise from Mom. After moving to Flossmoor, she made the choice to become active in Hadassah with the support of my dad. She moved into leadership positions until she became the president of Zahava and then built her portfolio through various positions in the Chicago chapter. Esther Berman just told me that Mom gave her her first leadership position on the chapter board and how important that was to her. In 1986, she was honored to take on the role of Chicago chapter president. Chicago was in its heyday. She oversaw luncheons, planned events with thousands of people. She raised millions of dollars for Hadassah. She joined the national board and mentored volunteers nationally. Hadassah provided Mom with the opportunity to develop public speaking, leadership, fundraising expertise, delegation skills, party planning. When I got married, my friend said, "Who's your party planner?" I said, "My mom, of course." And really, truly, so much more. Hadassah taught my mom so much. It really made her, I think, who she was. But more importantly, it allowed her to build so many enduring friendships. These women have reached out to me from as far as Israel and are listening today and in the room, and I know how much she loved them and how much they loved her. Mom was my inspiration for my involvement in Hadassah. I was so lucky to be among a small group of special women who get to serve nationally with their mother.
Over the past few days, I've received so many emails where my Hadassah colleagues have all remarked about my mom in the same manner. A past national president said, "Your mom was so elegant, so loved, and so respected." So many others commented on her beautiful smile. But the most consistent message for me was that Mom was always beaming with pride as she watched me rise up the Hadassah leadership pipeline. One of my greatest blessings with Mom was to share over 30 years of Hadassah experiences with her. Mom, you gave me the gift of a love of Zion and the Jewish people, the joys of making a Jewish home, being a demanding and nurturing mother, and how to be a life partner with Dan. You will always be with me.
All right. Thank you all for coming. All right. 12 ounces of apricot preserve, wishbone Russian dressing, 1 package of Lipton onion soup, mixed and baked with a whole cup cut up chicken. A 2013 email simply titled Recipe for Chicken. Grandma shared this recipe with my wife Jessica over 10 years ago, and when she cooked it for me this week, it set off a lot of memories and waves of nostalgia. When I think about Grandma, meals together always come to mind, whether going out to dinner in Vale, brunches at East Bank Club, sleepovers on Polly Lane. Grandma and Grandpa were always ones to have large family meals and to bring us together. I inherited her love of ribs, and it was sweet to see that even as her appetite suffered in later years with dementia, she still loved her ice cream. It was sad to see Grandma lose part of herself with dementia, but fortunate to see that she still found enjoyment in the day-to-day things. After my grandpa died, I wondered what it would be like to visit Grandma alone at the Carrington. No more Grandma and Grandpa as the pair they'd always been. But with mixed feelings, I'm glad that they did not have to spend much time apart. To have Grandma pass peacefully at home and as much comfort as we could give her is a blessing. It brings a smile to my face knowing that she now has her full mind and body with Grandpa out there somewhere. These last few months have made me realize nostalgia hits me the hardest, I think, in our family. I saved Grandma's birthday and holiday cards, and there's likely some saved letters from summer camp at home. I have voicemails of nothing more than her saying hello or congratulating me on some accomplishment, knowing years ago that I'd want to be able to hear her voice again. I love looking at the pictures, remembering the times we had and how special they were. Grandparents have always meant unconditional love. They help to raise you when you are younger, come to your many events, laud your accomplishments, and even spoil you. How do you show someone like this that you appreciate their love and support? One such way was deciding to have Grandma sign our Ketua, which hangs in our home for me to see every day and will be a memory that I cherish. And it was a small token of how much I cherished her love. I cherish the memories of visiting Grandma in Florida, boating on the Intercoastal, and the adventures of her driving, even in the later years. I cherish our numerous family vacations, playing mahjong and doing jigsaw puzzles, but mostly I cherish how she made me feel when I saw her. Grandma, I love you and miss you, and I'm glad you are at peace.
Grandma was the type of person that just liked to be in the room with you. She always matched your speed. She never expected anything from you. My grandfather, never afraid to ask you for a favor. My grandmother, always willing to give one. I really got to see my grandmother's hospitality on my multiple stays in Florida during college. They started snowbirding there in their 70s. Grandma was always ready to pick me up from the airport. She'd make sure I had plenty of food and even accommodated my sleep routine, which back then, after a week of finals, meant sleeping in until 11 a.m., her calling my parents to ask if anything was wrong with me. By the time I woke up, she'd already gone on multiple walks, played tennis, had breakfast, and was enjoying her late morning reading session. Grandma was an avid tennis player, playing well into her 80s. My grandpa loved watching sports, but my grandma loved playing them. Even in her declined state, Grandma never lost her caring nature. When we'd visit her in memory care, she was always tidying up when we came into her room and offering us a seat if we were standing too long, and never afraid to compliment the grandchildren on our looks. Being a caring host was core to her being. Hannah only met her in the declined years in her declined state, but I always tell her that she really did get to see the core of who my grandma was, because every time we visited, she was so hospitable and made sure that we were taken care of. Even though she couldn't answer any of our questions, she was always guiding us to a seat or saying hello or asking if we needed anything. It was core to her being, something the dementia couldn't take away. Grandma, I'll miss shopping on your dime, your impeccably timed witty comments, and your endless positive support. I love you.
My relationship with my grandma could sometimes feel overshadowed by my grandpa. It was not often where I'd have an interaction with my grandma that did not include my grandpa. There was one thing, though, that I truly felt Grandma and I had independently of my grandpa, and that was food. We often went out to eat as a family, whether it be Chinatown, Maggiano's, Wildfire. Eating out was a way for us to connect and spend time together. Like most adolescent boys, I was always hungry. My major stress at dinner usually involved me having to decide between which entree I would get. While it seems trivial now, that was high stakes for a 10-year-old boy. That never was a problem when I went out for a meal with my grandma. She would always be willing to split her entree with me so that I could have a taste of everything, even if it mostly just involved me eating her meal rather than me sharing mine. Grandma always made sure I was full. While we did go out to eat, my grandma was also a great cook, as you've heard. I remember many family dinners where she would make her famous brown rice, cookies, and despite being a fervent Jew, pork chops. One time, I made this mistake of telling my grandma how much I liked her snickerdoodle cookies. I swear for the next 5 years, whenever I saw my grandma, she would have a Tupperware full container of snickerdoodle cookies. I never had the heart to tell her that I could not eat all the cookies, because I know that was her way of showing me how much she loved me. As I've gotten older, I've gained a better appreciation for learning about one's history and the history of one's family members. My only regret in my relationship with my grandma is that I never got the opportunity to learn all of her history and her stories, and for her to get to know me as an adult. I take solace in the fact that she's in a better place now, and just know that I love you very much, Grandma, and I wish I could have one more dinner or one more box of snickerdoodle cookies with you.
Grandma was an above and beyond grandmother. When I was not quite 3 years old, we took a family trip to Jamaica. On that trip, she let all 5 grandchildren, at that time Red wasn't born yet, bury her in the sand at the beach. How many 72-year-olds would do that? Even as young as I was, I still remember that experience. When I was 5 years old, I got sick the day before Purim at school and had to stay home. I was devastated. My mom called Grandma, and she came to stay with me the whole day, even doing lots of special Purim activities my mom set up so I wouldn't feel left out. When Hannah and I went to summer camp, everyone was jealous because we got more letters than anyone else. A big part of that was Grandma. Only my mom wrote more letters than she did. They were good letters, too, or as good as they could have been, given she wrote 4 or 5 times a week. You kind of run out of things to say at that point. Grandma's first instinct was always to take care of us. She was constantly bothered by the fact that Hannah and I would never wear coats when it was cold outside. And during the last couple of years, even though she was in the depths of dementia, she'd always try to get us to eat some of her food when we visited her in memory care. Many of you know that my grandma was an amazing mahjong player. She taught Hannah and I how to play when we were 9 years old. After that, our yearly trips to Florida would always include hours of games of mahjong with Grandma, while Grandpa suffered through them as our reluctant 4th player. I still remember our last game of mahjong in the spring of 2022. Even though her dementia was quite acute by that point, she still managed to win 1 round of the game to all our astonishment. It was a great example of how ingrained that game was in her mind that she could still play. Of everything that Hannah and I did with Grandma, mahjong felt the most like our thing together, and I will think of her every time I play, especially with her old mahjong set.
So if you knew my grandma, you knew that she liked to be included in things. She never wanted to be left out, whether it was people talking about her behind her back or going on vacations and leaving her at home. In that spirit, I wanted to talk about some of my favorite things that Grandma and I got to do together that she included me in. The first was baking. When I was little, I loved Grandma's crescent cookies, and so she taught me how to make them, which was really exciting to me. When Grandma baked, she always had to be very precise. Everything had to be exact. And that emphasis on precision turned out to be a good thing because it's the reason why we all have all her recipes now, like multiple people have mentioned. And sometimes when my family eats those foods, we just always call them Grandma's, like Grandma's rice or Grandma's spaghetti sauce. Grandma also loved to come on vacations with us, even when the vacations took a lot of effort, like our trip to Washington, D.C. when I was 3rd grade. She kept going. One of our favorite things to do on those trips was go to art museums. I liked to take a long time to look at every painting, and Grandma would always stay with me so I wasn't left behind alone, even though she did get impatient. One of our favorite art museum memories came from that D.C. trip, when Grandma, tired from a long museum day and a lot of walking, tried to sit on what she thought was a chair and turned out to be a piece of modern art that was shaped like an upside-down sink. When I was a senior in high school, and again over COVID, a couple years later, Grandma and Grandpa came to live with us. Grandma always loved hearing about our day, especially funny stories about our AP Physics class in high school. One thing that was particularly special was the relationship we had with our golden retriever, Prima. When Prima was a small puppy, she got to meet Grandma for the first time because we went to an Illini football game, and Grandma babysat while we all went to the football game. Finally, Grandma didn't get left all alone. She had a little friend, and Prima always sensed that Grandma needed her and needed that unconditional love and tried to always say hi to her and sleep under her chair. Their relationship reminded me of the importance of unconditional love and someone just being unconditionally happy to see you whenever you go spend time with them. I know how special that is because even in the depths of dementia, that was always the relationship I had with Grandma. When her memory was failing at the end, she never forgot to be happy to see me and to tell me that she loved me, and that will always be something that I cherish.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. Grandma was always a stylish lady. She passed along her love of fashion to me. Her support guided me towards pursuing a career in fashion design. I remember when I was younger, I always wanted to show her my newest outfits, waiting to hear her approval. Perhaps the outfits I decided to put together at 4 weren't always the most runway ready, but she always had a kind word to say to me. I'd like to think now that Grandma and Grandpa are together again, and she's able to ensure he will continue to at least try and have a good outfit. Now I do have the opportunity to wear these gold bangles that were once hers, and I feel like I get to carry her kind energy and spirit with me every day, and I think that the rest of my family agrees. We love you and miss you.
Thank you for all of those memories. If everyone would kindly rise for the memorial prayer. El malei rachamim shochen b'amromim, hametzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina, b'ma'alot kedoshim u'tohorim, kizor akiyan mazirim, lenishmahat Esther bat Yosef v'Shoshana shalcha li'olama, בעבור שמשפחתה נודרים צדקה בעד הזכרת נשמתה בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה. לכן בעל הרחמים יסתיריה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור חיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר אמן. O God, full of compassion, Thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of thy presence, among the holy and pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament, unto the soul of Arlene Freedman, who is gone unto eternity. Lord of mercy, bring her under the cover of thy wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life, be God's possession, and may her repose be in peace. And let us all say once again, Amen. Please be seated.
Thank you, friends. This concludes our service here at the chapel. Interment will take place at the family plot at Jewish Oak Ridge Cemetery. Upon return from the cemetery, the family will be sitting Shiva at the Freedman Leonard residence, 842 Prairie Lawn in Glenview, till this evening at 8:30 p.m. Tomorrow at the Freedman Wander residence, 98 Marquette Road in Highland Park, from 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. Memorial contributions in Arlene's memory can be made to Hadassah, Chicago North Shore, which we heard so much about. That information, as well as information for the Shiva, is available on the service folder received on the way in. If you not received, there's available on the way out as well. And for those who are watching online, that information is on the funeral home website. For those who wish to join the family, a procession will be forming just outside the funeral home. For measure of safety, please make sure you obtain an orange funeral safety sticker, which can be placed on the inside portion of your windshield. For additional measure of safety, we're going to be placing magnetic flags on the rooftop portions of your vehicles throughout the procession. While in procession, please make sure your bright lights and hazard lights are on at all times. Please drive as closely to the car in front of you, especially as we go through intersections. We want to avoid any large gaps from entering the procession. For initial measure of safety, we will also be providing a tail car, which will hopefully keep cars from entering the procession. Please avoid talking on your cellular device while en route to the cemetery. The following individuals have been honored to serve as pallbearers. When I call your names, if you could please rise and stand next to Mrs. Freedman's casket. Ryan Freedman, Jordan Freedman, Connor Freedman, Rachel Wander, Hannah Wander, Ren Habiby, Jessica Warchall, Hannah Silverman, Kathy Leonard, and Dan Wander. At this time, I have to ask everyone to please rise as we escort the casket, the rabbi, and the family from the chapel.